When we speak of the mysteries of the ancient world, few things stir the imagination as powerfully as megalithic structures. The word itself simply means great stone, but in archaeology, it carries a much deeper significance. Colossal monuments, gateways, platforms, and temples carved and assembled from stones so massive that they force us to question how ancient peoples could have moved them. These sites challenge not only our understanding of construction engineering, but also every conventional explanation we have ever known. Mainstream archaeologists continually try to answer the big questions. Who created them? When and why? But the evidence often does not quite fit. Some structures seem to be even older than the cultures we believe built them. Others display a precision and scale far beyond the capabilities of the tools that people of that era were thought to possess. And in many cases, their original purpose remains a complete mystery, leaving behind structures too advanced to ignore, too strange to explain. From gateways carved from single stones to temples older than the pyramids, here are 10 megalithic structures that experts are still debating. Each one challenges our understanding of the past. Were they ceremonial sites, astronomical observatories, ritual gateways, or something we have not even considered? The question is not just how they were built, but why the ancients went to such extraordinary lengths. Why carve an entire mountain into a foundation? Why drag stones weighing hundreds of tons across harsh terrain? And why are so many of these monuments aligned with the stars, the solstices, or the rising of the sun? Join mystery as we walk through some of the world's most enigmatic megalithic structures, following the traces that their builders carved into stone. Sit back, relax, and let this video guide you into the past. Because these massive walls, foundations, and sculptures may be more than just the ruins of forgotten civilizations. They could be intentional messages preserved in stone, a legacy from civilizations that were erased by events beyond our comprehension. 1. Aramumuru, Peru, the Gate of the Gods. On the high plains of southern Peru, near Lake Titicaca, exists a stone structure that leaves any visitor speechless. Aramumuru. It does not resemble a temple, does not soar like a pyramid, nor is it a fortified citadel. Instead, it is carved directly into a red rock face of the Hayumarca Mountains, isolated, remote, and with almost no signs of human presence. Standing 7 meters tall and 7 meters wide, this massive stone carving has the distinct shape of a gateway, with a large rectangular niche and a smaller alcove at its center base that looks like a keyhole. But standing before it, you realize the strange truth. Behind the gate, there is no room, no supporting architecture, only solid, monolithic, and mysterious rock. The site was little known to the outside world until the early 1990s, when writers and tour operators began to promote it as a place of mystery. For local communities, however, it was already a place steeped in story. The Aymara people in the region have long described it as a portal. In their tradition, natural features like caves, springs, or carved rocks can serve as gateways between the physical world and the world of spirits. Aramumuru fits perfectly into that worldview. Visitors to the area are told that shamans once approached the alcove in rituals, pressing their foreheads against the stone and entering a trance state that allowed them to pass beyond ordinary reality. Some legends go even further, claiming that people could actually pass through the gate and never return. One particular story has survived through oral tradition since the Spanish conquest. It tells of an Incan priest fleeing the invaders with a sacred golden disc. According to the tale, he reached the stone gate and placed the disc into the alcove at its center. The rock responded, opening a passageway through which he stepped, disappearing forever. Whether this legend reflects an older myth or was shaped by later storytelling is impossible to say. But its persistence shows that the site was strongly tied to the idea of passage between worlds. From an archaeological perspective, the feature poses a puzzle. Unlike other large-scale structures in the Andes, it is not part of a larger complex. There are no ruins scattered nearby, no staircases leading up to it, and no indication that it was the entrance to a larger building. It is simply a carved surface in an isolated location. Scholars who have studied it often propose that it was an unfinished project, perhaps started and then abandoned by the Inca or by a previous culture. The large niche might have been the first stage of cutting blocks from the mountain, or the beginning of a temple facade that was never completed. Another possibility is that it was never intended to be a functional gateway, but a symbolic one. In Andean belief, the concept of a portal was not always literal architecture, but could represent a passage to another realm, whether the world of ancestors, the gods, or the dead. What makes the site more difficult to classify is the care taken in the carving. The symmetrical surface and the smaller niche appear deliberate. If it were simply an abandoned quarrying project, why go to the effort of shaping such a clean frame? The absence of tool marks also raises questions, as the finish looks smoothed in a way that is not typical of rough, unfinished quarries. This has fueled alternative theories that it was always intended as a ceremonial structure, designed specifically for ritual use. In the late 20th century, as interest in ancient mysteries grew, Aramu Muru began to attract attention beyond Peru. Some writers have speculated it is a stargate, a literal device for travel to other worlds. Others have linked it to the myths of Lake Titicaca, suggesting it served as a symbolic gateway to the sacred landscape where the Inca believed their civilization began. The lake itself has long been surrounded by legends, with stories of gods emerging from its waters to give law and knowledge to humanity. Seen in this light, the carved rock could be part of a larger ritual tradition, connecting the mountain, the lake, and the sky. For modern visitors, reaching Aramu Muru requires a trek into the Hayumarca region, a high-altitude landscape of rock outcroppings and sweeping views of the lake. Those who stand before it often remark on its scale, as the gate is several times taller than a person. The smaller alcove is at the right height for someone to place their head or an object inside, reinforcing the impression of intentional design. Some visitors describe unusual sensations at the site, from dizziness to vivid dreams afterward, though such stories are difficult to separate from suggestion and expectation. Despite its growing fame, Aramu Muru remains on the fringes of archaeological discussion, largely due to the lack of hard evidence about its origin or purpose. Unlike nearby sites like Tiwanaku or Silustani, which have been extensively excavated and studied, the stone gate offers no artifacts, no construction layers, and no datable material. It simply exists, carved but unfinished, mysterious but undeniable. This lack of context has left it open to interpretation from all sides, from cautious archaeologists to speculative theorists. What can be said for certain is that the monument embodies central themes of Andean culture: passage, transformation, and a connection to the divine. Whether it was ever intended as part of a larger project, a ritual site, or a symbolic work, it reflects a worldview in which stone was not just a material, but a medium for linking worlds. Its remote location adds to this. Far from urban centers, but close to landscapes that have long been considered sacred. The unanswered questions still hang over the site. Was this simply a carved rock face that never progressed further? Or was it a deliberate construction meant for a purpose we no longer understand? Without inscriptions and without adjoining structures, the answer remains out of reach. Yet, the monument's scale and form ensure it will not be forgotten. For those who visit, it stands as a silent stone threshold, a gateway carved with precision, but forever unopened. As we leave the Peruvian highlands, we carry with us the image of a massive stone gate with no passage. Was it intended as a ceremonial monument, or a door waiting for something or someone to open it? Whatever the truth, it is a reminder that some of the world's most fascinating megalithic structures are not great cities or towering walls, but solitary stoneworks that hold a mystery as deep as any temple or pyramid. 2. El Fuerte de Samaipata, Bolivia. The Carved Hill. Leaving the lone stone gate of Aramumuru, our path crosses the high plains and valleys of the Andes to neighboring Bolivia, where another monument rises from the living rock. But this one is almost impossible to ignore in scale. Here, near the small town of Samaipata, is a sandstone hill 220 meters long and 60 meters wide. Its entire surface has been carved and reshaped by human hands. Unlike a temple built of blocks or a fortress assembled stone by stone, this is a continuous rock mass sculpted directly into terraces, channels, niches, and geometric shapes that cover its summit. Standing on top, you do not feel as if you are inside a building. You feel as if the entire hill has been turned into a ceremonial platform. Archaeologists have named it El Fuerte de Samaipata, though the name is misleading. 17th century Spanish chroniclers thought it was a fortress. But on closer inspection, you realize this rock has no defensive walls, no gates or bastions, and its overall form suggests something else entirely. Long before the Spanish arrived, this hill was the focal point of multiple cultures, from pre-Incan groups to the 15th century Inca themselves. Each culture seems to have added its own layers of carving, expanding the terraces, niches, and channels, creating a complex ritual and astronomical map that spans the entire hilltop. The surface of Samaipata is extraordinary. Deep channels cut across the rock like artificial waterways, channeling rainwater through grooves up to 0.5 to 1 meter wide and 0.3 meters deep. Niches are carved into the walls, and terraces connect one level to another, while geometric patterns dominate the summit. Rectangular pools, grooves creating grids, and straight lines that stretch to the horizon. At one end, a structure resembling a ceremonial throne faces the valley, where the view extends for miles toward the Amazon. Some grooves run east, west, suggesting they may have been astronomical sighting tools, tracking the rise and set of the sun, the seasons, and stellar cycles. The sheer size of Samaipata raises immediate questions. Why carve an entire hill when smaller temples would have been easier to build? The effort required to smooth the sandstone, create deep channels, and form wide platforms far exceeds what would be necessary for ordinary ceremonial structures. It suggests the site was intended to serve a role beyond daily life. Some archaeologists argue it functioned as a ritual center, a place where rulers and priests could gather large numbers of people for ceremonies tied to agriculture, fertility, or the cycles of the sun and stars. Others see it as an observatory in its own right, a giant, open, air calendar carved into the landscape. One detail that is often highlighted is the presence of the carved channels that would have carried water across the rock. This has led some researchers to wonder if part of its purpose was hydrological. Perhaps rainwater was collected and channeled through the site, and the controlled flows symbolize life, giving rivers. In Andean culture, water is sacred, tied to the gods, and to survival in high-altitude environments where rainfall is scarce and unpredictable. Carving channels into the living rock could have turned the hill itself into a model of the natural world, a microcosm where the sky, water, and earth met in ritual. When the Inca expanded into the region in the late 15th century, they incorporated Samaipata into their own system. The empire was famous for integrating local sacred sites into its state religion, rebranding old shrines as huacas under Inca control. Samaipata became one of these sites, reused but never erased. Later, when the Spanish arrived, they too tried to impose their interpretation, calling it a fort and even building a small colonial settlement at the site. This cultural layering has made it difficult to attribute the carvings to a single period, as traces of pre-Inca, Inca, and Spanish presence overlap across the hill. Despite centuries of speculation, its true function remains elusive. The fortress idea persists in the name, but makes little sense when faced with the site's reality. There are no walls or defensive structures, and the wide, carved terraces would be impractical for military purposes. The ritual and astronomical theories carry more weight, especially given the Andean tradition of integrating natural features into ritual life. Even so, its scale sets it apart. Unlike the smaller temples or observatories scattered across the Andes, Samaipata turns an entire mountain into sacred architecture. Standing there today, the impression is overwhelming. Imagine standing on top of a single rock that stretches the length of 2 football fields. Its surface is carved into terraces like a giant platform. The lines and channels at your feet are both precise and abstract, as if they were meant to convey a meaning that has long since slipped from our grasp. The wind blows across the summit, and from its edges, you can look out over the valleys stretching toward the Amazon basin in one direction and the high Andes in the other. It feels more like a stage built for both gods and men than a temple. Excavations around the site have found the remains of housing and ritual structures built of masonry, suggesting that the carved rock was once the center of a larger complex. This reinforces the idea that Samaipata was not an isolated monument, but part of a ritual landscape, a place where the entire community participated in events that bound together religion, governance, and cosmology. Spanish records from the colonial period mention indigenous rituals still taking place there, though their descriptions are filtered through the lens of missionaries looking to suppress native practices. The unanswered question is what knowledge justified such a monumental effort. Smaller, more easily built and maintained temples would have sufficed for most purposes. To carve an entire hill required generations of labor and coordination, suggesting the builders were working toward a vision that transcended ordinary needs. Was it an open, air observatory designed to track the stars, a ritual model of the natural world where water and rock mirrored the cycles of nature, or a ceremonial center that united diverse groups under shared traditions? Even without an answer, the Samaipata rock remains a rare example of megalithic ambition on a continental scale. It is not just a monument built of stone. It is the stone itself, reshaped by human design while remaining inseparable from the mountain. And like so many of the world's great megalithic structures, it leaves us with questions that archaeology has yet to answer. Why carve a mountain when smaller temples would do? What meaning was preserved in those channels and terraces, now worn down by centuries of weather? And what drove the ancient builders to reshape an entire hill into a platform that still defies easy explanation? 3. Gunung Padang, Indonesia, the world's oldest pyramid. And while the massive carved rock of Samaipata makes us wonder what vision could have inspired ancient builders to reshape an entire hill, our next site takes us even further into the mystery. This time, in the lush highlands of West Java, Indonesia. Rising from a forested hillside is Gunung Padang, a hill long known to locals. But it was not until the 20th century that archaeologists began to recognize it as a massive megalithic monument. To the naked eye, it appears as a series of terraces leading to the summit, each platform built of hexagonal basalt columns stacked in a seemingly deliberate order. As you walk through, it feels as if the hill itself has been transformed into a stone staircase to the heavens, each footstep echoing on the solid rock. A reminder of the ancient hands that meticulously placed each stone. The history of research at Gunung Padang began in the early 20th century, when Dutch colonial surveys noted the strange rock formations. Later excavations, mostly from the 1970s to the 1990s, showed this was not a random geological phenomenon. The volcanic columns, naturally hexagonal in shape, had been quarried and placed into the terraces, platforms, and walls that cover the hilltop. Folk tradition has long considered Gunung Padang a sacred place, a ceremonial center where, even before formal archaeological study, locals held offerings. Mainstream archaeology estimates the existing terraces were built around 500 BC, during Indonesia's late prehistoric period, when megalithic forms were common throughout the archipelago. But Gunung Padang stands out for its scale, covering an area of about 3 hectares, with terraces rising up to 5 to 6 meters per level and extending over 50 meters in total height. It is one of the largest megalithic structures in Southeast Asia. However, what has propelled Gunung Padang into global debate is not just its impressive construction, but the controversy surrounding its age. Beginning in the 2010s, Indonesian researchers led by geologist Danny Hilman Natawijaja began a series of surveys using ground, penetrating radar, core drilling, and geoelectric analysis. The results suggested that beneath the visible stone terraces lie much older layers, built foundations that extend deep into the hill, possibly dating back as far as 20,000 years. If correct, this would make Gunung Padang not only the oldest megalithic structure in the world, but also more ancient than any known civilization by tens of thousands of years. This claim was sensational. At 20,000 years old, Gunung Padang would predate agriculture, cities, and organized religion as they are conventionally understood. It would suggest that advanced societies capable of large-scale stone construction existed during the last glacial maximum, long before mainstream archaeology places the rise of civilization. Such an idea resonates with alternative theories of lost civilizations. But it also contradicts the established archaeological record, which holds that human groups during that era were hunter-gatherers with limited construction means. Critics were quick to raise objections. Some argued that the supposedly older layers are not man-made, but simply natural volcanic formations. The hill is composed of columnar basalt, which fractures into regular shapes and can look artificial even when untouched. In this view, the deeper cores represent natural geology, with the visible terraces representing a later human modification of the surface. Others question the dating methods, noting that organic material found in soil layers might not correspond directly to the construction of the stone structures. The debate is unresolved. The Indonesian government has paused excavations in response to the criticism, while international scholars have urged caution before rewriting the history books. The findings have not gone away. Supporters of the deep age hypothesis point to the organized patterns detected underground, arguing they look more like construction than random geology. For them, Gunung Padang could represent a forgotten chapter of human history, evidence of a sophisticated culture that was wiped out at the end of the Ice Age. Walking through the site, the sense of scale is undeniable, regardless of its exact age. Each terrace is lined with upright basalt columns, some standing vertically, others laid horizontally to form retaining walls. Narrow staircases climb from one level to the next, giving the impression of a step pyramid that merges with a natural hill. From the summit, the surrounding mountains stretch out in the mist, and it is easy to see why local communities have long considered it a sacred place. The arrangement of the stones seems too deliberate, too structured, to be dismissed as mere geology, even if the deepest layers remain a matter of debate. The implications of older dating, if proven, would be profound. A 20,000-year-old pyramid would suggest that human societies in Southeast Asia had reached a level of complexity rivaling ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, long before those civilizations emerged. It would force a re-evaluation of global prehistory, raising questions of lost knowledge, forgotten traditions, and the resilience of human culture through catastrophic changes in climate and sea level. On the other hand, if the site is indeed only a few thousand years old, it remains a remarkable achievement of local megalithic builders, showing the diversity and creativity of traditions that flourished outside the better-known centers of the ancient world. Gunung Padang continues to attract researchers, tourists, and spiritual seekers. For scientists, it offers a testing ground for subsurface analysis methods and a challenge to interpret ambiguous results. For visitors, it is an inspiring stone landscape, where the line between natural formation and human design blurs in a fascinating way. And for those who live nearby, it remains a sacred hill. Its terraces are still used for ceremonies and offerings, just as they have been for centuries. Whether future excavations prove Gunung Padang to be truly ancient or confirm it as a late prehistoric temple, the site stands as one of the most captivating megalithic wonders on Earth. It holds both the promise of paradigm, shifting discoveries, and a reminder to be cautious when interpreting evidence that falls outside familiar timelines. Gunung Padang remains an unsolved mystery. If it is really 20,000 years old, it would rewrite the entire history of civilization as we know it. Are you curious to explore more of these ancient mysteries? Subscribe to the channel to join us in unlocking the untold stories from humanity's past. 4. The Akapana Pyramid, Bolivia, a man-made mountain. Our journey now returns to the Andes, where another monumental structure dominates the high plains of Bolivia. Here, at an altitude of nearly 4,000 meters above sea level, is the ancient city of Tiwanaku, a site that flourished long before the rise of the Inca Empire. At its heart is the Akapana Pyramid, a vast terraced platform measuring some 200 meters across, with stone-faced tiers rising in a series of levels that once formed one of the largest ceremonial monuments in South America. Unlike the solitary mystery of Aramumuru or the sculpted rock of Samaipata, the Akapana was part of an extensive ritual complex, one that suggests an advanced and highly organized society. The Akapana was built in the form of a step pyramid, not unlike those found in Mesoamerica. Though its structure and style are unique to the Tiwanaku culture, its base forms a cross-like outline when viewed from above, and its terraces climb 7 levels to a height of about 17 meters. Each level was originally faced with large stone blocks, some weighing several tons, carefully fitted together. At the summit was a sunken courtyard surrounded by finely cut andesite walls, giving the impression that the top of the pyramid itself had been hollowed out into a ritual chamber open to the sky. One of the most remarkable features of the Akapana is its drainage system. Stone channels and conduits run through the pyramid, designed to channel rainwater from the summit down through the terraces and out onto the surrounding plain. This was not just practical engineering, but was almost certainly symbolic, turning the pyramid into an icon of a sacred mountain. In Andean cosmology, mountains were the source of life, giving water, and were seen as the homes of powerful spirits. By building an artificial mountain that controlled the flow of water, the Tiwanaku people may have been creating a symbolic universe, linking the sky, the earth, and the underworld in one monumental structure. Archaeologists generally agree that the Akapana was a ceremonial center used for rituals tied to agriculture, fertility, and astronomy. Its alignment with the cardinal directions and its commanding view of the Altiplano suggest it played a role in marking the solstices and seasonal cycles, which were crucial for a society dependent on farming in such a challenging environment. At the same time, its sheer scale indicates it was meant to impress, a physical statement of Tiwanaku's power and spiritual authority. And yet, many questions remain. One concerns the sourcing and transport of the massive stones used in its construction. Some of the andesite blocks were quarried more than 40 kilometers away, across Lake Titicaca, while other sandstone blocks came from even further. Moving these huge stones without the use of the wheel or draft animals would have required immense coordination and ingenuity. How the Tiwanaku did it is still a matter of debate. Experimental archaeology has shown that large groups of people using ropes, rollers, and sleds could theoretically move such blocks. But the logistics of doing so over rough terrain and open water remain daunting. Another mystery is whether the Akapana was ever finished. Much of the pyramid today is a ruin. Its terraces collapsed and its summit eroded. Spanish chroniclers in the 16th century described it as partially destroyed even in their time, with locals dismantling it for building material. But some archaeologists believe the structure may have never been fully completed. Certain sections look incomplete, as if construction halted abruptly. If so, why would such a monumental project be suspended? Was it due to internal decline, external invasion, or simply the limits of resources at such a high altitude? The idea of incompleteness ties directly into the broader mystery of Tiwanaku itself. The city, which reached its peak between 500 and 1000 AD, was the center of a culture that influenced vast regions of the Andes. Yet it left behind no written records. Its decline is poorly understood, though climate change and drought are leading theories. Without texts, the precise purpose of the Akapana can only be reconstructed through its architecture and comparison. Some scholars interpret it as a giant ceremonial pyramid, symbolizing a sacred mountain, while others suggest it was designed as an artificial water temple, channeling rainwater to mimic the life-giving streams of the Andes. Both interpretations point to a society that saw no separation between engineering and cosmology. Visitors to Tiwanaku today often describe the Akapana as a massive mound of earth and stone, its grandeur hidden beneath centuries of erosion. But archaeological reconstructions reveal its original form would have been striking. Terraces faced with polished stone, water flowing through carved channels, and priests performing rituals in the sunken court at its summit. Standing on top, looking out over the high plain, it is easy to imagine how the structure once dominated the landscape. An artificial mountain that mirrored both its environment and the heavens. The puzzle of the Akapana lies not just in its scale and function, but in what it tells us about the Tiwanaku people themselves. This was a society capable of organizing huge labor forces, quarrying and transporting megaliths over considerable distances, and shaping architecture to express complex spiritual ideas. And yet, with no written language, their voice is silent. All that remains are the stones, bearing mute testimony to their ambition. The questions about the Akapana still hang in the air. Was this pyramid ever completed? And are we seeing only the remnants of time? Or was it an unfinished project whose builders never saw it to completion? What was its true role? A ritual center, an astronomical tool, or an artificial mountain connecting the sacred landscape of the Andes? Until new discoveries emerge, any answer remains speculative. The meticulously carved terraces and the channels that guided rainwater through the stone suggest that the Tiwanaku were not just building a pyramid, but creating a model of the cosmos, reflecting the intimate connection between mountains, water, and the sky in their worldview. Today, the Akapana stands majestic and silent, a reminder of a culture with profound knowledge, but an undeciphered legacy. And the question that remains for us is, can we ever truly understand the meaning of this design? Or will its mystery forever challenge the human imagination? 5. Marcahuasi, Peru, the plateau of stone faces. While the crumbling terraces of the Akapana speak of careful planning and immense labor, our next site is something else entirely. Journey once again into the Andes, this time to the northeast of Lima, and you will come to a windswept plateau more than 4,000 meters above sea level. Here, nature and mystery collide on a scale that has fascinated explorers for nearly a century. The Marcahuasi Plateau is scattered with enormous rock formations that, to many, resemble faces, animals, and architectural structures. Spread across several square kilometers, these shapes appear in such abundance that it is difficult to walk the plateau without seeing something that looks like a profile, a head, or a figure gazing back at you from the rock. Marcahuasi first came to wide attention in the 20th century. when explorers and writers began to document its unusual rock formations. Locals had long considered it a sacred landscape. But it was the researcher Daniel Russo in the 1950s who brought the plateau to prominence. Russo argued that the shapes were not just the work of erosion, but were ancient sculptures created by a forgotten civilization. In his view, the plateau was a kind of giant gallery, its figures representing humans, gods, and animals from a time so remote that no other records of it exist. His writings spread internationally, attracting the interest of archaeologists, mystics, and tourists. The rock formations at Marcahuasi are awe-inspiring. Some rise vertically like towering spires, while others stretch horizontally across the plateau, forming bizarre shapes. What is particularly striking is that with each observation, they seem to reveal familiar forms. Visitors point to a formation they call the Monument to Humanity, with its profile of a human head. Other rocks evoke lions, camels, and even majestic sphinxes, as if from a myth. The constant appearance of these figures has fueled decades of debate. Are they the deliberate work of ancient artists, or just a trick of the imagination, where the human brain finds patterns in the rock and shadows? Geologists lean toward the latter explanation. The plateau is composed primarily of volcanic rock, which has been shaped by wind and water over millennia. Natural erosion can create remarkable forms, and the phenomenon of pareidolia, the tendency to perceive faces and shapes in random patterns, is well documented. For them, the Marcahuasi figures are impressive but accidental, the result of natural forces combined with human imagination. Supporters of the sculpture theory counter that some of the shapes are too precise to be dismissed. They argue that the angles, proportions, and alignments of certain figures suggest deliberate shaping. Some have even proposed that the site may have been worked in stages, with natural outcrops being enhanced by human hands. If so, the question becomes, who carved them, when, and for what purpose? There is no mainstream archaeological evidence linking the plateau to any known culture, though pre-Incan groups inhabited the surrounding valleys. With no artifacts or datable remains, the theory remains speculative. But the allure of a lost civilization persists. Local legends add another layer. Communities near the plateau have long considered it a sacred place, associated with healing, visions, and mystical experiences. Shamans have used it for rituals, and modern visitors often describe unusual sensations or strange dreams after spending the night among the rocks. The altitude and isolation may play a role in these perceptions, but the legends endure, reinforcing the sense that Marcahuasi is more than just geology. Alternative theories have thrived in this environment. Some fringe researchers suggest the plateau holds messages from an ancient global culture, encoded in stone for future generations to discover. Others propose astronomical alignments, arguing that the rock figures are arranged to mirror constellations or track celestial cycles. A few have even connected the site to extraterrestrial visitation, suggesting that the sheer size of the figures and their supposed global similarities are evidence of contact. These ideas lie outside mainstream academia, but they have kept Marcahuasi firmly in the spotlight of mystery tourism. From a practical standpoint, one of the challenges in settling the debate is the absence of excavations. Unlike structured sites like Tiwanaku or Gunung Padang, Marcahuasi has no walls, foundations, or clear artifacts that can be studied. Its mystery lies entirely in the shape of the rocks. With no cultural material to anchor it, archaeology struggles to move beyond speculation. This leaves the interpretation wide open, with both skeptics and believers seeing what they expect to see. Standing on the plateau, the experience is powerful, regardless of one's beliefs. The high altitude creates a stark landscape with a vast sky and little vegetation. The rocks stand out against the horizon, their weathered surfaces glowing in the changing light of the day. In such a setting, it is not hard to see faces in the stone or animals carved by some ancient hand. Whether natural or man-made, the effect is the same, a sense of entering a landscape that is alive with presence. Theories about how such figures could have been created range from the simple to the extreme. If ancient hands were involved, basic tools could have pecked away at the volcanic rock to enhance natural shapes, much as other cultures carved petroglyphs and statues. The when is harder to pin down. Some proponents suggest a great antiquity, tens of thousands of years ago, while skeptics argue there is no evidence of human activity beyond the last few millennia. The who is also uncertain. Peru is rich in cultures that have shaped stone in creative ways, from the Chavin builders to the Inca themselves. But no direct link has been found. In the end, Marca Huasi occupies a unique place among megalithic mysteries. It is not a pyramid, a temple, or a carved platform, but an open plateau where the line between natural form and human intention is blurred. That ambiguity is its power. Visitors can walk for hours, seeing faces and animals everywhere, or dismissing them as imagination. Scholars can debate geology versus art, but the rocks remain silent and imposing at 4,000 meters above sea level. And so the central question remains: are these rocks evidence of ancient art? Or is the human brain simply wired to see patterns in stone? Until conclusive evidence comes to light, Marca Huasi will remain both a sacred landscape and a geological wonder, a place where science and legend coexist in an uneasy balance. 6. Zorat's Karar, Armenia, Armenia's ancient observatory. On the majestic Shunik Plateau in southern Armenia, a windswept field presents a mystical sight, with hundreds of basalt stones standing tall like sentinels guarding the distant mountains. This site, known as Zorat's Karar, has long captured the imagination of travelers and researchers, earning it the nickname Armenia's Stonehenge. Spanning about 7 hectares, it features over 200 standing stones, many weighing several tons. Some of these monoliths are pierced with mysterious circular holes, a detail that has fueled endless speculation about their function, from astronomy to ancient rituals, challenging all imagination. The stones at Zorat's Karar are arranged in loose lines and circles, creating a sense that everything was deliberate, not random. Walking among the monoliths, visitors can easily notice alignments that seem to frame the horizon, as if they were erected to track the rising and setting of the sun or the stars. This is why Zorat's Karar is often compared to other ancient observatories, from Stonehenge in Britain to Nabta Playa in Egypt. It is not just about astronomy. Excavations have also uncovered tombs scattered throughout the area, suggesting the site was also a necropolis. This unique combination of astronomical and funerary roles has made Zorat's Karar one of the most fascinating megalithic mysteries, leaving scholars and visitors alike to question its true purpose. Dating the site has proven to be particularly challenging. Some archaeologists have proposed its construction around 2000 BC, placing it in the Bronze Age alongside other megalithic traditions in the region. However, others have argued that parts of the site could be much older, potentially dating back to 5500 or even 7500 BC. If those older estimates are correct, Zorat's Karar would be one of the earliest known monumental sites anywhere in the world, predating the Egyptian pyramids and the ziggurats of Mesopotamia. The range of dates reflects the complexity of the evidence. While tombs and pottery fragments suggest Bronze Age use, the weathering of the stones and the mysterious holes hint at a deeper antiquity. The holes themselves are perhaps the most compelling feature. Roughly a third of the stones contain these circular perforations, drilled straight through the basalt with surprising precision. Some researchers have argued they were used for astronomical observations, allowing ancient sky watchers to sight stars and track celestial movements with greater accuracy. When aligned with specific points on the horizon, the holes could have marked the solstices, equinoxes, or the rising of important constellations. This would have turned Zorat's Karar into an open-air observatory, enabling its builders to track time and the seasons in a landscape where agriculture was heavily dependent on celestial cycles. Not everyone agrees with this interpretation. Skeptics have suggested the holes might have served more practical purposes, such as anchoring wooden beams or ropes during construction, or even for acoustic effects in ceremonies. Others believe the holes were drilled at a later period, possibly in the Middle Ages, and were not part of the original design. The debate continues, leaving the question of their true function open. As for who built Zorat's Karar, scholars generally agree that it was the work of local cultures that thrived in the Armenian highlands during the Bronze Age. These societies left behind numerous megalithic sites, stone tombs, and fortified settlements across the region, indicating a deep tradition of monumental stonework. However, if the older dates are correct, it would imply the involvement of much earlier cultures, whose identity remains unknown. That possibility feeds alternative theories that view Zorat's Karar as evidence of a lost civilization with advanced astronomical knowledge. Excavations at the site have revealed stone-cist graves and artifacts related to burial practices, reinforcing the necropolis interpretation. Some of the standing stones appear to mark burial chambers, creating a landscape of both the living and the dead. In many ancient cultures, aligning tombs with celestial events held symbolic meaning, linking the ancestors to the cycles of the heavens. This idea bridges the two main theories. Zorat's Karar could have been both a necropolis and an observatory, a place where the movements of the sky were observed alongside rituals honoring the dead. Visitors to Zorat's Karar today often remark on its atmosphere. The stones rise in uneven rows on the plateau, some upright, others leaning or toppled. And yet, the sense of intention remains strong. The holes in the monoliths invite curiosity. One cannot help but peer through them toward the horizon, as if stepping into the role of an ancient astronomer. The combination of the stark basalt stones, the vast sky, and the distant mountain ranges creates an impression of timelessness, as if the site has been watching both the stars and humanity for millennia. Alternative interpretations have expanded even further. Some fringe researchers have suggested the precision of the holes indicates the use of advanced drilling techniques unknown to Bronze Age cultures. Others have proposed alignments that go beyond agriculture, suggesting connections to distant constellations like Orion, or Sirius, echoing theories often attached to other megalithic sites around the world. While mainstream archaeologists caution against such leaps, they highlight the fascination that Zorat's-Karar holds as a crossroads of science, ritual, and imagination. The broader context of Armenia adds depth to the discussion. The region has long been a crossroads of civilizations, connecting the Near East, the Caucasus, and Central Asia. The megalithic traditions here may have developed independently or been influenced by surrounding cultures. Zorat's-Karar, with its blend of astronomy, mortuary practice, and monumental construction, reflects that dynamic history. Whether it was built in 2000 BC or thousands of years earlier, it embodies the desire to link the earth and the sky, the living and the dead, through enduring stone. As with so many megalithic sites, the greatest mystery lies in what has been lost. With no inscriptions or texts, the builders of Zorat's-Karar left behind no explanations. The stones remain, their holes and alignments raising questions, but offering no definitive answers. Were they watching the stars, the dead, or both? Until more evidence comes to light, Zorat's-Karar will continue to stand as Armenia's Stonehenge, a monument to both human ingenuity and the enduring mysteries of the ancient world. 7. The Stelae of Tia, Ethiopia. The stone swords. Amidst the windswept highlands of southern Ethiopia, a field of stone stelae stands out against the rolling landscape, as if the rocks are guarding the memory of a bygone era. Here, near the small town of Tia, are hundreds of standing stones, many weighing several tons, each seeming to tell a silent story of a mysterious culture. Today, 36 of them are preserved by UNESCO. But even this number is just the tip of a megalithic iceberg that extends across the country's south. A testament to an ancient stone, erecting tradition whose true meaning remains beyond modern comprehension. The stelae at Tia vary in size, with some standing up to 5 meters tall and others no higher than a person. All are made of local stone, quarried and shaped into slabs before being erected vertically in the ground. Their arrangement is not uniform. Some stand in lines, others in clusters, suggesting they may have been placed at different times or for different purposes. What makes Tia particularly remarkable are the carvings that cover many of the stones. Unlike the plain stelae found elsewhere, these are incised with swords, abstract geometric designs, and enigmatic symbols that defy easy explanation. The sword motifs are especially striking. Dozens of stelae feature vertical or horizontal blades carved onto their surfaces, complete with hilts and guards. For some researchers, these carvings represent warriors, perhaps commemorating fallen individuals or warrior lineages that once held sway in the region. For others, the swords may represent more abstract ideas: power, protection, or authority. The geometric patterns add another layer of complexity. Circles, spirals, and chevrons appear alongside the weaponry, hinting at symbolic systems whose meanings are now lost. Together, the carvings suggest a culture that placed deep significance on these stones, using them to encode messages that still elude modern interpretation. Excavations at Tia have revealed that many of the stelae are associated with graves. Human remains discovered beneath and around the stones confirm their role as grave markers, linking the monuments to funerary practices. However, the presence of weaponry and symbols complicates the picture. Were the stelae meant to honor specific individuals, perhaps warriors or chiefs? Or did they represent collective memory, marking community graves rather than single ones? The variety of carvings suggests multiple layers of meaning, with each symbol carrying significance in rituals that are now forgotten. Dating the Tia stelae has proven challenging. Archaeologists generally place them between the 10th and 15th centuries AD. But Ethiopia's broader megalithic tradition stretches back much further. Other sites in the region have been tentatively dated as early as the first millennium BC, suggesting that stone erection here was both ancient and widespread. Whether Tia represents a continuation of older traditions or a unique cultural development remains uncertain. With no written records, the builders remain anonymous, their identity inferred only from the stones themselves. Theories about who erected the Tia stelae are varied. Some have suggested they were put up by Cushitic, speaking groups who dominated southern Ethiopia in the medieval period. Others point to shifting alliances and migrations, arguing the stelae may represent cultures that are now extinct. The symbolism of the swords hints at a martial society, one in which warfare or defense played a prominent role. However, the lack of clear historical references means these connections remain speculative. What is clear is that whoever built Tia possessed both the technical skill to quarry and transport large stones, and the symbolic imagination to turn them into lasting cultural statements. Alternative theories have also emerged. Some researchers have proposed that the carvings are not merely decorative, but encode complex cosmological or social systems. The geometric shapes, for instance, might represent clan symbols, territorial markers, or even astronomical references. Others have gone further, suggesting that Tia might be part of a ritual landscape stretching across Ethiopia, a network of megalithic sites connected by shared beliefs. While these ideas remain unproven, they reflect the difficulty of interpreting a monument with no direct cultural continuity. The broader context reinforces the mystery. Ethiopia is home to thousands of megalithic structures, from undecorated standing stones to elaborately decorated stelae like those at Tia. The sheer number of sites suggests a long, standing stone, erecting tradition that was central to identity, memory, and ritual. In the northern city of Aksum, giant obelisks once stood as symbols of imperial power, showing that stone could serve as a medium for both religion and politics. Tia may represent a more localized version of the same impulse, a way of lending permanence to power, memory, and cosmology in a landscape shaped by change. Walking among the stelae today, visitors are struck by their solemn atmosphere. The stones stand at slight angles, weathered by centuries of wind and rain, but their carvings are still visible. The swords, in particular, seem to demand attention, their lines cut sharply against the surface of the monoliths. Some appear upright, as if ready for battle, while others are horizontal, perhaps signifying death or rest. The abstract symbols invite interpretation, drawing the eye again and again as one tries to discern meaning in their repetition. It is a landscape of messages encoded in stone, but in a language that no one living can read. The unanswered questions give Tia its enduring appeal. Why swords? And why so many? What do the geometric symbols mean? And why were they chosen to accompany the weaponry? And perhaps most importantly, who were the people who erected these stelae, leaving behind such significant monuments yet disappearing completely from the historical record. The UNESCO recognition has ensured that Tia is preserved and studied, but much of the mystery remains. For now, the site stands as a reminder of the depth and diversity of Africa's megalithic traditions. Often overlooked in global narratives of prehistory, its stones speak of a culture that valued memory, symbolism, and art, but whose voice has been lost to time. The swords carved here may represent warriors or entire cultures that have been forgotten. 8. Sechin Bajo, Peru. The foundations of Andean civilization. Right in the middle of the Casma Valley, on the northern coast of Peru, Sechin Bajo emerges as an ancient testament to ritual and power. Although today only low walls and sun, worn plazas remain. Each stone still tells the story of a monumental architectural center built around 3500 BC, making it one of the oldest sites in the Americas. This discovery has changed how scholars view the history of South America, forcing them to reconsider when and how complex societies emerged, and highlighting that civilization in this region has far more ancient origins than previously thought. At the heart of Sechin Bajo is a series of ceremonial platforms and plazas, the earliest structures, built over 5 millennia ago, consist of stone walls and open spaces designed for communal gatherings and rituals. Over time, later generations built new layers on top of the old, burying earlier phases and reshaping the site while maintaining its sacred role. This cycle of construction, burial, and rebuilding continued for centuries, leaving behind an architectural record that documents changing styles, technologies, and cultural priorities. Walking through the site today, one encounters multiple levels of construction, each representing a distinct moment in the life of a community that returned time and again to the same sacred ground. One of the most remarkable discoveries at Sechin Bajo is a circular plaza built of stone dating to around 3500 BC. This structure, more than 10 meters in diameter, is one of the oldest of its kind in the Americas. Its sunken form and surrounding walls suggest it was used for rituals that brought people together in a shared ceremonial space. Above this original plaza, later builders constructed rectangular platforms, staircases, and larger open areas, gradually transforming the site into a monumental complex. The layering is so extensive that archaeologists speak of Sechin Bajo not as a single building, but as a sequence of communities, each inheriting the site and reshaping it in their own tradition. The significance of Sechin Bajo lies not just in its age, but in what it reveals about social organization. To build large platforms and plazas required coordination, surplus food, and specialized labor, all signs of a society moving from subsistence to more complex forms of life. Before the site was excavated, many scholars believed that monumental architecture in Peru began later, around 3000 BC, at sites like Caral. Sechin Bajo has pushed that timeline back by several centuries, showing that organized communities capable of building ceremonial centers existed much earlier. It underscores the idea that the rise of civilization in the Americas was not confined to a single valley or culture, but was a broad, interconnected process. As with many ancient sites, questions remain about who exactly built Sechin Bajo. The Casma Valley was home to many cultures over time, from early pre-ceramic communities to later polities that left behind more elaborate stone carvings and temples. The earliest builders of Sechin Bajo are still unnamed, known only through the structures they left behind. Their decision to return to the same site over millennia suggests a strong sense of continuity, as if the place itself held an enduring sacred meaning that transcended individual cultures. The construction methods are also noteworthy. The earliest walls were made of rough stones held together with mortar, forming sturdy enclosures for the plazas and platforms. Later phases show more refined masonry and larger-scale planning, evidence of growing expertise. Each rebuilding seems to have involved both destruction and renewal. Old structures were entombed and buried beneath new ones, perhaps as part of a ritual closure. This practice has parallels at other Andean sites, where the burial of earlier temples may have symbolized cycles of life, death, and rebirth on a cosmic scale. Alternative interpretations of Sechen Bajo have added layers to its mystery. Some researchers suggest the repeated rebuilding was tied to astronomical cycles, with each phase marking a renewal of the cosmic order. Others argue the site may have been a political center as well as a ritual one, where leaders demonstrated their power by overseeing the construction of massive new platforms. There are also theories that environmental changes, such as floods, droughts, or earthquakes, led to cycles of abandonment and rebuilding, with each generation adapting the site to new circumstances while preserving its sacred core. The age of the earliest plaza raises broader questions about the development of civilization in the Andes. If people were gathering for rituals at Sechen Bajo as early as 300 BC, then the foundations of Andean culture were laid much earlier than the great Inca Empire, and even earlier than the Old Kingdom pyramids of Egypt. It suggests South America followed its own trajectory toward a complex society, independent of the Old World. Some scholars see in this a reminder that civilization was not a single invention, but a pattern that emerged in multiple places, each shaped by local landscapes, resources, and traditions. Visitors to Sechen Bajo today find a site that is ruined, but still impressive in its scale. The broad platforms rise from the desert floor. Staircases climb their eroded tops, and the sunken plazas are still visible despite centuries of decay. The surrounding valley, with its river and fertile fields, provides a context that explains why communities could have gathered and thrived here. Standing among the low stone walls, it is easy to imagine processions descending into the circular plazas, rituals taking place in the open courtyards, and generations of builders renewing the site as both a temple and a symbol of identity. The enduring mystery of Sechen Bajo is why its builders chose to bury their monuments time and again. Unlike abandoned sites that were left to crumble, Sechen Bajo was deliberately entombed and rebuilt, as if each cycle required a fresh start. This suggests a worldview in which time itself was cyclical, demanding renewal through architecture. It also raises questions about what knowledge was carried forward and what was lost with each rebuilding. Did later generations fully understand the meaning of the earlier structures they covered? Or were they simply preserving a tradition without grasping its origins? For archaeologists, Sechen Bajo has become a key site for understanding the deep history of the Andes. For the wider public, it remains a place of wonder, less known than Machu Picchu, but far more ancient, carrying the weight of thousands of years of human effort. Its layered structure embodies both continuity and change, showing that sacred spaces can outlast the cultures that built them. And so the question remains, why was a site built, buried, and rebuilt for thousands of years? Until we fully understand the beliefs of its earliest builders, Sechin Bajo will remain a monument not just to the origins of Andean civilization, but to the enduring mysteries of how humans shape and reshape their sacred landscapes. Imagine a world 10,000 years from now. Our technology, our digital data, our glass skyscrapers, all could vanish without a trace. What we consider great today might become ruins swallowed by time. But these stones, they will still be standing, defiant against wind, rain, and the upheavals of history. They are not just stones, but silent witnesses to a distant age. The last will and testament of a people long gone. A will that leaves no inheritance, no fame, but only a burning question etched into the planet itself. We existed. Who were we? So who were they? Hunter, gatherers with extraordinary dreams? Or the inhabitants of a magnificent civilization that history has accidentally torn from its pages? And why did they choose stone and these specific locations to leave their mark? Were they trying to communicate with future generations so that we might understand their wisdom, their beliefs, and their rituals? Where does the truth lie? In what science can prove? Or in what our deep intuition tells us when we are faced with such greatness? There are mysteries that numbers, equations, or carbon-14 cannot fully explain. There are stories that exist only in the silence of stone, in the darkness of vanished civilizations. This debate is not just for archaeologists. It is for all of us, the curious, the dreamers, those who always want to touch history with their imagination. Leave your opinions, your speculations, your arguments below this video. Because sometimes, we who are living today are also a part of the story that is gradually unfolding. And as you leave this video, do not just see it as an old story. See it as an invitation, a mysterious ticket to a journey of discovering human history that no one has yet been able to fully solve. An invitation for you to step into a world of unanswered questions, of wonders that time cannot destroy. Follow the Mystery Channel and join us on our next journeys, where we will explore ancient mysteries, colossal unsolved structures, and civilizations whose traces still echo through the millennia. This is not just a video. It is a reminder that mystery still exists, and you can be a part of the search.